Diablo School Board for January 12th. We were reconvening after closed session. At this time, I would like us to acknowledge that we are meeting on the ancestral land of the Bay Miwoks and the Yokots. And we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Vice President Inzawi.
Here.
Trustee Fowler.
Here.
Trustee Mayo.
Here.
Trustee McPherson.
Here.
Trustee Cound.
Here.
Trustee Mason is here, and we're going to have a little quick business we take care of with Dr. Clark at this time.
On behalf of the students and staff and cabinet and governing board, we would like to recognize Trustee Cound's commitment to the Board of Education as she served in 2021 as president. And we have this plaque on behalf of the board and all the stakeholders here in the Mount Diablo Unified School District. And thank you so much for your leadership during the time that you served as president.
Okay. The report out from closed session is on 7.1 negotiations. The board received information. 7.2 possible discipline, dismissal, or release was a placeholder. 7.3 anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation or claims made pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D2. The board received information, and that was our closed session, and now we're at public comment. First public comment is from Kip Penovich. Huh? Oh.
I have a few items that I wanted to bring up, so we'll see how quickly I can get through these. My first thing that I wanted to bring up is kind of a disappointment in some communications that went out over the course of the last week. My colleagues and I do follow, social media and different websites, and over the past week, there's been a series of posts that ended up on Claycord that I think the way they were worded and presented didn't really represent teachers very well. And I know a lot of my colleagues were very offended with the wording that was used given to Claycord. Now, it has never officially come out who contacted who there. Did Claycord ask the district for numbers and they were provided, or did the district reach out to Claycord to get this information, give this information to them? But there could have been better places if you just wanted to get that information out. And for people who know that, usually they say, I go to Claycord when I have something that I want to get out there that's inflammatory. So I will just say none of that was very well received from the teachers. Now, with that being said, a few months ago, having a public communication come out from the district saying, well, teachers only work 186 days, doesn't sit very well either. I have to go home and upload my videos from today so my students who weren't there can go ahead and try and be caught up. And over my break, I spent 2 or 3 days grading my finals and getting my grades in and preparing for the upcoming semester. So there is a pattern of, I don't know if I want to call it painting teachers in negative lights or undermining them, that I will tell you I'm not appreciative of. The last thing is, and I've seen a little more movement on this, I will say up until maybe today, I could ask, why do we even have a COVID dashboard on the district website? Because there was nothing on there. I've seen movement in the last couple days. It is very delayed. And whether that's going to change, then that would be great. If it's kept up to date so that people are aware of what's going on, that's great. If that's not going to happen, you might as well just take it down, because it's not giving people accurate information that helps them, make their decisions as to whether or not they feel they want to send their kids to school. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Liz Herring.
Hello, today I would like to talk about a few things. The first one is related to one of our favorite buzzwords, equity. And the fact, that the district is pushing for equity in schools is amazing. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. However, it's again, something that is being tasked to educators. And I think that there needs to be a clarification that equity and equality are not the same thing. And if we tried to fix the issues by just making everything equal, we would fail. For example, at Mount Diablo High School, there has not been a librarian for years. The library has recently been remodeled with new paint and carpet and furniture and plans to integrate technology, which is awesome. However, I'm the only one working there, and I'm only working there 2 days a week. And it is a disaster. It looks like a book bomb went off, and there's no rhyme or reason to why anything was put anywhere. And so the work ahead of me is immense. And students at Mount Diablo High deserve a library. They deserve a librarian. They deserve access to that. I'm also placed at another school that has a fully functional library that has been functioning for years. It is accessible to kids every single day. And I am basically a warm body there on Fridays because somebody else runs the library. So I'm just covering. And I would love it if, rather than saying, oh, to be fair to everybody, we have to give this amount of librarian to this school, and it has to be equal. I would love to see a shift where we say, where are the kids needing a librarian? Where is it most beneficial? So that's my first thing. The next thing I'd like to talk about is our CBO. As far as I know, every union in the district voted no confidence in her, and she still remains in that position. To add insult to injury, she recently went to the press and spread more propaganda and directly called out librarians and counselors as positions that may need to be cut for the next year. She claims schools do not need to have counselors and librarians. I disagree, and I hope you do too. I think that it is tragic that somebody is speaking on behalf of the district and making statements like, oh, well, we don't need them, like they're good and all, but we could do without them. And then finally, COVID. Oh no, I'm running out of time. COVID used to be 25 out of 100,000 people was time to shut down. There are, 16 times that amount on the dashboard, which we all know is very delayed.
You can finish your thought.
Okay, I just really hope that there is something that we can do in the district to mitigate the fact that every teacher is going to school and they're putting themselves at risk because there's no other option. And I would really hope to hear from you guys soon as to how you plan to solve this problem.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and apparently, because I was reading up there, I skipped over the review and potential approval of the agenda. So if board members want to make any changes, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I move the board adopt the agenda as presented with such changes as deemed necessary by the chair.
Okay.
Second.
Right. Waiting for it to come. Do you want to vote on that? Yeah. Okay, so trustee Fowler,
Yes.
trustee Mayo,
Yes.
trustee Nzewi,
Yes.
trustee McFerrin,
Yes.
trustee Cowan. Yes. And trustee Mason votes yes as well. So we're sticking with that agenda. Thank you. Okay. There we go. It did come up. District organizations. Do we have any cards, trustee Nzewi? No, we do not. Okay. So that takes us to 10.1, I believe. Am I on track now? Okay, so 10.1, review and potential approval of resolution 21-22-44 in recognition of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Dr. Clark.
Thank you very much, President Mason. I have a resolution that we would like to bring for the board to consider adopting. This is resolution 21/22-44 in recognition of January 17th, 2022 as Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Whereas in 1964, Dr. King received the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, Norway for his dynamic leadership of the civil rights movement and steadfast commitment to achieving racial justice through nonviolent action. He pledged the prize money to the movement's continued development. At the age of 35, Dr. King became the youngest man and only the second African-American to receive the prestigious award. And now, therefore, the governing board of the Mount Diablo Unified School District hereby calls upon everyone to observe this day by actively participating in civic, community, and service projects in honor of Dr. King's 93rd birthday and to commemorate the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom by living our shared MDUSD values, striving for righteousness and bringing goodness to others. With that, I put this resolution in the hands of the board.
Thank you. Board members?
I move that we approve resolution 21-22-44 in recognition of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I'll second.
Okay, anybody want to make any comments or I was ready.
I just want to share an excerpt from Dr. King's last book before he was assassinated, Where Do We Go From Here? I think it's relevant in the times that we are in, especially as some people invoke his name in their own movements. And the excerpt goes, whites, it must frankly be said, are not putting in a similar mass effort to re-educate themselves out of their racial ignorance. It is an aspect of their sense of superiority that the white people of America believe they have so little to learn. The reality of substantial investment to assist Negroes into the 20th century, adjusting to Negro neighbors and genuine school integration is still a nightmare for all too many white Americans. These are the deepest causes for contemporary abrasions between the races. Loose and easy language about equality, resonant resolutions about brotherhood fall pleasantly on the ear, but for the Negro, there is a credibility gap he cannot overlook. He remembers that with each modest advance, the white population promptly raises the argument that the Negro has come far enough. Each step forward accents an ever-present tendency to backlash. That's it.
Thank you. So with that, more comments?
Mine's like piggybacking on trustee Nzewi's. But I said that in honor of MLK Day, I hope everyone takes the time to reflect how far we've come in society, but also acknowledge how much farther we need to go. I feel like that's a really big impactful thing, is where we are in society is not as close as where we should be at this time. And then also for the Black Student Union meeting this week at College Park, we'll be watching some of the I Have a Dream speech from MLK, and we'll be also acknowledging other civil rights activists, because a lot of people only know MLK as a pretty big Black historic figure, but there's so many others we don't know about. So
Thank you. Any other comments from board members? If not, we'll take the vote. Okay. Trustee Fowler,
yes.
trustee Mayo.
No, we're voting on it's a work.
Yes.
I mean,
Oh, I forgot.
yeah.
I'm back in the old remote days. Okay. Very good. That passes. And the next one is,
So I will take this item.
Yep.
President Mason. So
Yes,
this
sir.
is for the board's consideration. This is resolution 21/22-45 in recognition of January as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Whereas in 2011, President Barack Obama issued a presidential proclamation designating each January to be National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. And whereas slavery was officially abolished in December 1865 by passage of the 13th Amendment, and only recently became illegal worldwide when the last country banned it in 2007. And now therefore be it resolved that the Mount Diablo Unified School District does hereby proclaim January 2022 as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and urges all residents to actively participate in the efforts to both raise awareness of and end all forms of human trafficking in our communities, and encourage schools and law enforcement to continue partnerships that support youth impacted by human trafficking, and seek to raise awareness of the presence and impact of human trafficking on Contra Costa County's youth. With that, I put this resolution in the hands of the board.
okay. Trustee Count,
Madam President, I move to approve the resolution 21/22-45 in recognition of January as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month.
thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comments before we move forward?
I wanted to highlight something that was in the resolution document, and it said approximately 40 million people worldwide are trafficked, and out of that 40 million people, 26% are children under the age of 18. And this needs to be acknowledged, and I'm happy we're doing it, but it also educators and parents and peers also have to teach and look out for one another and teach those, don't talk to strangers, be aware of your surroundings. Especially me, I walk back to my car, Dr. Clark walks me. I appreciate that. And when I'm walking from work, I always just am on the lookout, because as a woman, as a Black woman, I have to be trained to just always have my eye out, and I make sure that my peers and my friends know to do this as well.
And then I'll go
Okay.
in. Okay. I'll just add, I love the resolutions at this point is that it makes me, that's the month. So let me learn something about it. So this one I learned today, and when I looked up an article that was just published yesterday, COVID has shown that human trafficking is pandemic proof. And the article goes on to say online recruitment for sex trafficking in the US has seen a steep increase during the pandemic. The potential victims, mostly teens, are just spending way more time unsupervised on their devices. They tend to get more approaches by predators online, and that's been on the rise since the beginning of COVID. And that struck me because my teen daughter definitely has way more access now to her little phone and just everything. And if I'm honest, I have no idea what she's doing, especially because when she turned 13, I took off my Google, like I stopped monitoring, and I'm just really trusting that she's making good choices. And so this made me think, well, I hope she does, but she's still only 13, so I should be more involved. So I share that. So, because I think all of us can learn from that, especially those of us with young people still at home.
Thank you for that.
And to piggyback on that, it's true. I think a lot of us don't think this could affect us. Maybe, you know, it doesn't happen in my neighborhood or in my community, but it does. It actually happens everywhere. A lot of human trafficking happens in the suburbs. And so we are fortunate that here in our county, we have some really good resources. One is that District Attorney Becton started a specific human trafficking department that is focused on coordinating across cities throughout our county when this happens, which is huge because it used to be if someone got trafficked from one city line across to the other, the police weren't coordinating, you know, to follow that up. So now we have actually a human trafficking tip line that goes directly to that office. So it's the best local direct number that's not one of those national call lines. So that's 925-957-8658. And these are things we can post and I'll share. And then two other local resources are cocofamilyjustice.org, which is our family justice center, which has a location right here in Concord. And then loveneverfailsus.com is Love Never Fails is a nonprofit organization that has some incredible resources as well. And then there are all kinds of resources that these groups have come together to share, including in response to what you were just saying about internet safety. Tomorrow at 7 a.m., there's a training on how to protect yourselves and others from dangers of human trafficking present on the internet. That's provided by those organizations. So there are resources out there and we should be sharing them. Last 1 year ago, we had posters that went out to all the school sites. So I think one of the things we need to do is keep up with that and make sure that this information is really getting out to everybody, to all of our educators and staff who can see some of the signs and learn how to recognize it because it happens right in front of our eyes.
Well, and it also doesn't only happen online. I know not always, but sometimes if you see someone on a street corner selling fruit, they're being human trafficked. They're set there, they have no water, they have no shade, and they don't even know where they are to go anywhere. So when I see that, I'll call the local sheriff and just say, could you just drive by and check on that person? But it takes many forms. It's something we really have to be aware of. So glad to have this resolution. And with that, we'll go ahead and take a vote. So Trustee Fowler?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and that passes 5+1. Okay, so now we have review and potential approval of classified personnel appointment for payroll manager.
And we're going to have Mr. Sheehy from the Personnel Department present this for board consideration.
The Human Resources Department is bringing for the board's review and potential approval for the appointment of Victor Adame as the payroll manager in the Budget and Fiscal Services Department. Victor has started his career in education at San Ramon Valley Unified School District, working as a paraprofessional. He then became an account clerk before taking on his current role as payroll technician, which he has served for in the past 5 years. Victor is expected to complete the payroll management certificate program at Cal State East Bay in March of this year. Victor was born in Mexico, but has called the Bay Area his home since elementary school. He enjoys spending time with his dog and looks forward to joining MDOSD and collaborating with all staff.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the approval of, oh shoot, I already started, of the payroll manager, Victor. What's his last name?
Victor Adame.
Victor Adame, no disrespect. I didn't have his name in front of me.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second, so if there's no questions, then we'll go to trustee Fowler.
Yes.
And that passes 5+1 from our student. And if Victor's here, would like to come up and speak, he is not. Okay, well, if you're listening, Victor, welcome. We look forward to meeting you in person. Okay. Okay, that's it. It's the 12.1 review course of study revision process for secondary courses. It looks like Ms. Sachs is going to lead that discussion for us, so, and presentation.
Thank you, board. We'll just get the clicker here. Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. We're very, very happy to bring to you for this evening the first group of several batches of courses of study that are being currently worked on, either as revisions or pilots. What's really exciting about this work is something that's so incredibly important to our LCAP goal number 1, which is really making sure our district provides rigorous standards-based instruction. It's super aligned with our systematic instructional review report. We're under component number 2. It's all about culture, coherence, and the planning process, ensuring that we've got high quality curriculum and content. This is something that takes quite a bit of time and effort. It is certainly a team effort, and who I have here with me this evening is curriculum specialist Susan Hartwig, as well as members of her team that she will introduce. But we just are so excited about bringing you the first batch, which are our English courses. So in Mount Diablo, there's 2 processes when either a course needs to be or is requested to be brought forward as a new course, which would go through a pilot proposal, or a course that is currently being offered, which needs a revision. So if you take a look, we've got the revision, which is actually our English courses tonight. None of them are new. They certainly needed to be polished up and updated in order to align to our new standards, really keeping an eye on things such as our equity lens, making sure that we're taking a look at it through something where we're trying to be a lot more inclusive when it comes to our not only courses of study, but our materials as well as our instructional practices. The work that was being done, we were making sure that it was aligned to the UC, the University of California A through G portal, ensuring that all of these courses that students are then enrolled in, as they are taken and they earn particular grades, they are able to apply for college and to meet all of those requirements. And of course, making sure that there's a continuous review of these courses. Some of these courses of study were possibly done on typewriters. Some of them maybe on word processors. Some of them were on a Word doc, and then some of them are now in the Google. So we're really kind of bringing them forward in such a way that we're extremely excited, and we will not get to this point again where we have these courses just be sitting there for so long before a very systematic review. So that being said, I'd like to hand it over to Susan Hartwig.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. So just to basically to kind of dive into the process of this, it's a little bit different process than it has been in the past, and we are very fortunate to have our tech tools such as Google and shared documentation. And so those things were things that we really were able to utilize in this process. So when you think about the courses of study, the equity lens is our number one thing, right? And one of our best tools for equity is the standards themselves, because they are not differentiated. They are the standards, and we report to the standards even more than we report to assignments or individual teachers' passions, which are great, and we love that. But we still have those standards that undergird all of those important things. Most importantly, what made this process a little bit unique in this year that we were able to do was the collaboration with our department chairs. We were very sensitive to the idea of not pulling teachers from their classrooms in basically the last 18 months. So the most important thing is to keep our teachers with our students. And so we were very sensitive to that. So what we were able to do is get creative and go ahead and use that time that we have with our amazing department chairs, who are such great leaders, and take time to do that in our department chair meetings. So that's something that we're pretty proud of, that we didn't have to pull subs. We didn't have to, which we know in very short supply, and we did not have to pull our teachers from our students. And then we were able to actually use that Google system to use the comments feature and have our department chairs do the work together with us, our ed services team, and then take it back to their teams, much like you do with the framework, with the public comment. we were able to do teacher comments. And so teachers were given over a month to go ahead and review and then go ahead and make their comments. And then we were able to resolve them and then get to a point where we were able to finalize for you fine people to go ahead and give us your wonderful feedback. And this is more for your visual learners. This is more of a flow chart, but I wanted to go ahead and call attention again to that really important thing of being a Google district and being able to master the idea of the comments feature. So that was very important to us. Moving along, the revisions in this round, the revisions in this round that you're going to be seeing tonight, English 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then as the weeks and months progress, you'll get the opportunity to go ahead and review the other courses of study as well. So moving on. One of the things I wanted to go ahead and explain, there was some really good feedback. This is a particular standard that I'm using as an example, the research to build and present knowledge. I love this standard. It actually appears in all of our scope and sequence and across the grade levels, and also in our courses of study. So this is a great example. What you see highlighted is the way that a standard progresses as students move through the grade levels and advance through the grade levels. So you should see the standard advance, and you should also see their writing advance as well. So this is a really good example because it is also a college and career readiness standard. So we love our Common Core standards, don't we? We really do. And the math ones too. So before I move to questions, I wanted to go ahead and introduce these fine and brilliant educators. This is Jody Masong. She's a teacher and coach. She's our math secondary coach. Jeannie Johnson, who's also a teacher and a coach, and she is our secondary literacy coach. And then wonderful Rebecca Dell, who is a teacher over at Concord High. And I think you teach a bunch of different grades. And she's taught everything language arts. But none of this work can be done without the input of these brilliant educators. And I just wanted to go ahead and say that. And then we are open to any kinds of questions that you have. And we're very open to feedback too. We love feedback. It doesn't hurt our feelings. It just makes us better.
Okay.
So any questions, we are here to answer them.
Any questions? Comments? Well, I read through them. I thought they were very, very interesting, and I noticed changes, which
Great.
I'm a product of Mount Diablo. So
Me too.
on one hand, I'm like, well, they must have done well when I was in school because my daughters and I, we still get together and discuss the characters in the book and what was there, all the things that you were talking about doing, but they've changed a lot, which is also positive.
Yes.
Any other comments?
I was just going to ask if you could share where our current curriculum is posted on the website, and then how folks can access this. Will be proposed proposals be there as well, or will the individuals have to go to the docket to review them?
No, for clarification, just clarifying question. Do you mean the actual courses of study once they're published? Yes, they will be on the website. We're going to put them on the district website. We're also going to make them very easy to find for teachers as well on our Ed Services website. Does that answer your question?
I mean, currently, is
Oh.
there a way, an easy way where the public can compare them?
There is. So do you want to answer
You
that?
mean are you referring to the previous courses of study versus the new one?
Yes.
We can put that together. Currently, if you go to the instructional support or the Ed Services website, there is a link where it talks about specifically courses of study. If you click on that, it'll bring up the current courses of study. Of course, these have been revised. You can see in the document itself that there are editing marks. So that does help you see what was, and then hopefully what will be after we go through the process.
Okay.
So anybody in the public that would like to see what was in the past can go ahead to take a look at our current website. If they'd like to know the changes and everything, of course, the docket tonight has all of those recommended edits. In addition, the next section will have the ones that Board Member McFerrin provided. So thank you for that.
Thank you. From English teacher to English teacher.
Well, thank you very much, because I know it takes time.
It does, but it was a wonderful labor of love. I think we all agreed that it was a very good experience.
Well, we thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I want to thank everyone for their efforts, including the teachers who aren't here. I heard you say that this was not done during the school day and that that was to the benefit of our students. And I really appreciate everyone for taking on this additional work. It's a tremendous effort. And also, I want to say that looking at some of the sample assessments, I think that the way this is written is really accessible for teachers that are new or new to the district. And I think it provides really important guidance. And I think it's very teacher friendly. And I appreciate those efforts. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Trustee McFerrin. Appreciate that.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the clarification on the grade levels too. Really, that's helpful, I think, for parents to be able to see that as well.
Oh, as the standard grows. Yeah.
Thank you.
They are really cool standards, aren't they? Okay, thank you.
Okay, that takes us to 12.2, review of fiscal crisis and management assistant team, FICMAT report.
Yep, and so we have from FICMAT tonight, we have Marissa Plog, who is going to come up and join me at the table here.
Okay.
And she is going to present the findings that are a result, here you go, of our latest study. So we're very excited to hear the findings and the recommendations. Gotta turn on.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Marissa Plug, as I've been introduced, and I'm with the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team. And I thank you for your time today as I present to you the findings and recommendations from our recent engagement with your district. We were engaged probably back in June, I believe, do a review of your maintenance operations and facilities departments, staffing and operations. So just a quick overview about FICMAT. We are an agency that's established through legislation back in 1992. And we work with school districts, county offices, charter schools and the like to provide fiscal assistance. And we also provide what's called management assistance when LEAs would like for us to come in and do a review of operational areas. And that's the type of engagement that we did for your district in this case. We also do what's called a fiscal health and risk analysis. You've had us in your district for that, just following or just prior to the engagement that we conducted. And then we also conduct what's called an AB 139 extraordinary audit, and that has to do with fraud investigations and the like. We're funded through state legislative funding, special apportionment, and our fiscal administrative agency is the Kern County Superintendent of Schools. So you might find us linked directly to them, and that's because they're our administrative agent. The model that we use for our management assistance requests is a deficiency model. And what that means is we speak to the areas that we identify weaknesses and room for improvement. And we don't get to speak about all the wonderful things that we see in a district, which is really unfortunate, but it would be quite an extensive amount of reading material you would have before you if we spoke about all the wonderful things that we saw. The unfortunate part about that is it often leaves departmental staff feeling a little disappointed that our reports do not speak to all the great things that they're accomplishing. So I just want that to be known that while our report identifies many deficiencies, it doesn't mean that there's not a lot of great stuff going on in your district. So as I kind of kicked off with, the scope and objectives of our engagement were to do a staffing and review of both your maintenance and operations in your facilities department. Look at staffing, review staffing based on the size of your district and the characteristics of your campuses. We also did an evaluation of workflow and distribution of functions within each of those departments. We reviewed operational policies and processes and procedures. And in doing so, we do that by speaking with staff members directly. So we conducted, a full week of interviews with all of your staff, both in the maintenance and operations and facilities departments. but also at school sites and with your school administrators. And so we really spent quite a bit of time talking with people so that we could, make some correlation between what we observe, what we read and review in documentation, and then what we hear and what feedback we receive from your staff directly to make sure that there is a correlation and that they're in alignment. So we're going to start off with just a quick overview of organizational structure, because that really is the foundation. The leadership structure and how departments are laid out really speak to the oversight and the managerial structure that staff members work under. And the management structure that we use, we follow generally accepted theories of organizational structure, and we refer to this McKinsey and Company framework. And there's a great deal of data behind that and descriptions behind all the levels of management that I won't go into tonight, but it's a very thorough explanation of the types of duties and the span of control that leadership should have and managers should have through different departments based on the work that they do. So I'm going to speak to span of control when we talk about our staffing analysis. And what that means is the number of subordinates that can directly report to a supervisor. And that varies depending on the level of management. So your top administrators may have fewer direct subordinates underneath them. And as you go down the line, a supervisor may have a broader span of control over staff. Chain of command really speaks to the flow of authority, and we all know chain of command is basically you move through your hierarchy of supervisors when addressing concerns or taking responsibility and direction for the work that's being performed. And then we speak to line and staff authority, and that's really the relationships between the supervisors and subordinates. In the chain of command, we also refer to what's called the scholar principle. And that is that every employee has only one administrator or one supervisor that they report to. So they don't report to multiple supervisors, generally speaking. So we'll start with the maintenance and operations department. When we came in, there's quite a bit of movement going on in your district. So there were some changes that were going on at the point in time that we did come in. But we have a director of maintenance and operations. And that particular position, based on the theories that we follow, can have a span of control of about 6 or 7. And in your district, we have two direct reports that report to the director of maintenance. As we move down, we have a buildings and grounds manager, and we have a maintenance manager. Your buildings and grounds manager, according to these theories, can have a span of control up to 15 people for the security department and 6 to 7 under grounds. So that position oversees both grounds and security. We didn't do an evaluation of your security department. That was not asked for in the request, but we did look at your grounds department. The span of control under grounds at 15, you have about 25 direct reports that fall under the assistant building and grounds manager. And as I move down the hierarchy of your structure, it really, when we move down to the area facilities manager, there's a great deal of excessive staffing under that position. And in fact, you have 2 positions. One of those were vacant at the time we came into the district. We thought there were 3. But there's 140 direct reports that report to what was originally 1 is now 2, and it's still way overstaffed. The span of control for that position is 15, and so it's overburdened, definitely, to be able to be, you have to have effective leadership and effective oversight and management over the work that's being performed under them. And so what happens is the responsibilities then push up to your area buildings and grounds manager as well. And that's why I refer to that as overflow. So when we look at the assistant building and grounds manager, that one is also overburdened. When we move over to your maintenance manager, that position generally should have a span of control of about 6 or 7 direct reports, and they have 29. So again, you can see that in order to be an effective leader over the work that's being performed in that department, they have too many people underneath them. And so this is something that we observed both in maintenance and operations. We also see that to some degree when we get over into the facilities department and obviously in the grounds department as well. So our findings and recommendations of your management structure, we say that the managers who oversee grounds, maintenance, and custodial staff, they all have unmanageably wide spans of control. So they oversee too many people. The staff have little ongoing supervision, and what that means is work doesn't always get performed to the best of their abilities, or the time management may not be there. We just don't have people that are continuously monitoring and working with this direct line staff. And so we make a recommendation that a review of the management structure take place. This is a challenging situation because when we talk about staffing, obviously resources are involved, and resources, there's a lot of competing interests for resources. So we understand that that's a very complex situation. But as we proceed, and as you probably reviewed in our report, there were numerous deficiencies that we observed throughout the district, and those are clear signs and results of the fact that you don't have adequate oversight and supervision over line staff in these departments. I do understand that the administration has been working on a strategy or a recommendation model that they'll be bringing to you in the future months. So I know that there's work going on, even though we're just delivering this message to you right now. Our management structure recommendations, obviously back to evaluating management structure based on existing constraints, money, and contractual agreements. Those often, some of our recommendations are those that really take a collaborative effort to consider. We provided an unusual recommendation in suggesting that perhaps you consider placing site custodians under the direct supervision of site principals and making them responsible for evaluation and discipline of custodians. And the reason for that, making that recommendation, that is really, we like a centralized operations department as a general rule, but because it's so understaffed for supervision, we felt that that might be an option. And in our interviews and our site visits, speaking with school site administrators, having a role in the direction of their site custodial staff seemed like something that might be desirable to them. It was one of the concerns that was repeatedly expressed to the team, that they really had no control and felt like they were powerless to control the work that was being performed on their campuses. So we do elaborate in great deal what we feel needs to happen if you do choose to follow that model, but it might help provide some assistance in taking some of that burden off the two staff that are overseeing 140 people. Another observation that we found immediately was that the district has had a practice of basically staffing your custodial department in a one-size-fits-all manner, which means every elementary school gets the same staffing, every high school gets the same staffing, regardless of the size, configuration, et cetera, of each campus. And when we do our assessments, we do them based on the CADSBA staffing formula, which is not a perfect formula in and of itself, but it takes into consideration the square footage of campuses, the number of classrooms that are being used for teaching classrooms. We take into consideration enrollment count, and that provides a measurable amount of full-time equivalent staffing that you could expect for a campus. Obviously, it would take some tweaks based on unique characteristics that a district personnel would have, firsthand knowledge of, but it's more equitable to staff your campuses that way. Logistically, it can be a little more challenging as well because it's easier to put one FTE in or a 0.4 FTE in a position, and when you get partial FTEs, it gets a little challenging, but it does provide a tool for some analysis to determine whether your staffing levels are appropriate for your campuses. Overall, I'll speak to that. We also found in several areas that you had a lot of vacant positions. So our analysis are all based on those positions all being fully staffed. You have several vacant positions, and that exacerbates the problems that you guys are experiencing because you don't have warm bodies in the seats or in the positions to do the work that you need. And so again, this is reflective in the conditions of your campuses and what we're seeing and hearing from sites and administrators that we spoke with. So many school sites use classrooms for other purposes. This was something that was pretty identifiable. And I will say, originally we ended up with a great deal of data that there was a lot of conflict with, and your administrative team spent a great deal of time of going through campuses and really identifying what the uses of the campuses were. But we identified about 203 classrooms throughout the district that are being used for other purposes. And we do a workshop on declining enrollment, which we speak heavily on over the last several years. One of the biggest challenges that districts have is they are declining enrollment as they have open spaces that gets used for other purposes, and they have other costs associated with that, including electrical maintenance, custodial work, et cetera. And so an evaluation of your campuses is really important, so you have your finger to the pulse, shuttering classrooms that don't need to be used, et cetera. Another thing that we found is that the district has a really good comprehensive custodial manual. However, vacancies and inadequate supply of substitutes makes it difficult to meet the set objectives that are in that manual. And while the manual is extensive, some of the content is outdated and should be updated. But we were impressed that there was a comprehensive manual. That sometimes we don't see that. We also noticed that job descriptions located in the manual and on the district website were inconsistent and out of date. There are several requirements for job descriptions to ensure that their content is compliant, and we identified some areas of concern there. So we make some recommendations that those be reviewed and updated. We also noted that the district doesn't have a district-wide training program for the maintenance and operations staff and may be out of compliance with some health and safety requirements, and that there are few written policies and procedures regarding training, safety issues, and department protocols. So those were just some highlights of what we found. We make a recommendation that while we did provide the CASBO calculation, it should be updated, reevaluated, and used as a kind of a planning tool moving forward. We recommend that you work diligently to fill your vacant custodial positions, that you work with bargaining representatives to renegotiate language that speaks to custodial experience when hiring for sub-custodial positions, because that language was really unique and unusual, and it is probably a little bit of a roadblock for you guys in staffing some of those vacant positions. We recommend that you routinely monitor your classroom usage at all school sites, review and update the custodial manual and job descriptions, and implement regular safety training for maintenance, custodian, and ground staff. So our ground staff findings, we base those on what's referred to as the Association of Physical Plant and Administrator Standards, APPA. And those ground standards, again, just establish a framework to identify, what are your expectations for your school facilities and what needs to be done to accomplish that. We found that your district, based on your staffing, you have 24 full-time equivalent ground staff positions, 24 of which 3 were vacant. So that really puts you at 21 staff currently. That puts you at the bottom level of meeting the standards that are established for basically for school districts. It's those types of agencies, which is a minimal level. And that was pretty consistent with, again, the observations that the team made as we visited your campuses. We also found that the scheduling for grounds work and throughout the district was pretty arbitrary. There was no set standard based on, well, this campus has much more greater fields, more ground, more fields or more flower beds or more concrete. All those come into play and make a difference on how much time that particular site requires. So some study and analysis to make a determination on how we spread out our ground staff and the work that they perform on each site will vary. So our findings were that we had an ineffective approach to weed control as well. We noted a great deal of weeds throughout the district, and in interviews with ground staff, we found that there was some concerns about the approach to how we deal with weeds, et cetera. We also found that the district does not have any systematic approach for turf care and restoration. Those fields will degrade over time and require maintenance on an ongoing basis, and there's no plan to attend to those. We found that there is poor irrigation management throughout the district. And what that means is we had about 7 schools out of 50 plus schools that had a centralized irrigation control, and all the remainder, a grounds person has to actually physically go to the campus to adjust irrigation. And it's a highly inefficient model for managing irrigation on school sites. So we make a recommendation that you consider and look into a irrigation management system that can be managed from a centralized system. And then we also noted that you don't have a system for planting, tree care, and pruning safety. So lots of old trees out there, they present a danger, on campuses, and we really should have a plan for maintaining those routinely. And so basically this next slide is a summary of the same recommendations that speak to all those things you don't have, you should work on putting in place. So for our maintenance staff findings, we follow again the APP standards for maintenance staffing. And we find that your staffing levels, you have 30 full-time equivalent, exclusive of, or inclusive of 5 positions. So you really have 25, which means you fall somewhere between level 3 and level 4 with managed care and reactive care. We tend to kind of see the district staff working in more of a reactive manner. And so you're kind of falling a little short in those areas as well. We found that job descriptions are overly specific, and that's a condition that you have. You don't have very many general maintenance type positions where you can send one person out that can do many things. We have very specific. And one thing that was just really stood out to us is you have one plumber, one person that was responsible for handling all the irrigation for your entire district, which, is a daunting task and probably not manageable. And so we make a recommendation that you work to see if you can't work to add more job positions that have more generalized maintenance capabilities. We make a recommendation that you develop a plan for differentiating between contracted routine maintenance and contracted major maintenance. And when I say that, I'm speaking about contracting out major maintenance and routine maintenance. It's kind of, you want to know where your cost benefits are lying and whether you're appropriate to contract out in those areas. You should develop a plan for incrementally increasing staffing to move from a reactive management position up to a comprehensive stewardship level of maintenance, which is a level 4. Again, takes competing resources, but it's something that should be monitored and worked on. Again, reviewing and updating job descriptions to include other duties so urgent building health and safety issues can be addressed and not be this constant firefight. And consider adjusting current job prerequisites for skilled trade positions because the prerequisites are rather high, and in some cases, it's our understanding that you couldn't even take a person from another district that's fully capable of filling a position and putting them in a role straight out. So another area to work towards. Ongoing preventative and maintenance findings. The district has a great work order system, but it's not used to its fullest potential. It's primarily used for facilities projects and managing the work related to those. And we felt that it could be used more beneficially across all maintenance and operations, grounds. It can be used as a communication tool, so those that are having issues that need to be resolved can know what the status of their work order is, what's being done on it, when it's completed and closed out. Your district does not have a comprehensive preventative maintenance plan. That's something that's really important. It drives the work that gets done by your maintenance department. It identifies all the areas that need improvement. Even if we can't get them all done today, we have a list of priorities and we can address those in a systematic manner. And then again, the district lacks staffing, sufficient staffing to perform preventative maintenance. And we make some recommendations in the report for that. We recommend you use the work order system as an accountability tool. And basically, again, all of these recommendations speak to the findings that I've just gone over. The district doesn't have an actionable plan for addressing deferred maintenance or major maintenance needs. And again, we know we have a lot of needs. We need to be able to identify them all, identify some costs associated with those and prioritize those. And so that we can really direct funds that are intended to be used for those purposes and address those matters timely. And so that's something that we recommend takes place. We want to see that the district develop a comprehensive 5-year deferred maintenance plan. And that's not a summary plan. It really is a detailed, full detailed plan for each school site, identifies all the deficiencies or things that need to be maintained and the timeline in which those things need to be maintained. We can look forward and know how routinely do trees need to be trimmed, those types of things, and identify the costs associated with that so that we have a plan moving forward. Identify and allocate funding in the annual budget to address the most significant needs. That's always a great puzzle game. There are numerous sources of funding that can be utilized towards our maintenance and operations and facilities needs. And really, once we have a plan of all the needs that we have, we need to look at all the resources that are available and target those strategically to meet so that we can maximize the use of those dollars to meet those needs. They all have different requirements. So we really, it's a bit of a strategic game, but we have deferred maintenance funds that come in the form of our routine restricted maintenance resource. That's general fund money that's required that we move money in there every year. We have capital facilities funding. We have lots of different, funding sources, including ESSER more recently. So you have a lot of resources. It's just a strategic plan on how we're going to achieve those priorities within the district. Bonds and capital improvement division. So this is a bit of a smaller, this is your facility side of the house. Staffing recommendations can't be made in the absence of a current project priority list. So back in 2018, your district did a facilities plan. You had a huge plan done, but we don't have a list of priority projects. We don't know what we want to get done and when we want to get done. So it's very difficult to make recommendations on staffing related to facilities projects because you don't have a comprehensive list of projects that you want to have performed. So once you know what projects need to be done and the priorities of those projects, staffing is then assessed based on that. So that's an area where we can't really make any staffing recommendations. We want you to evaluate the effectiveness of using your internal construction managers based on both quality and quantity of work. Some of the challenges that were described to us is that while your internal facility managers moved some projects through, there was a lot of work that had to be redone or wasn't complete to the degree that it should have been and what have you. And so really you need to be able to evaluate the cost benefits of having external project management over internal project management. And that's really the best recommendation that we can make in that area. You have a planner in that department whose primary work is related to maintenance. And so we made a recommendation that position actually fall under the maintenance and operations side of the house. And you have an AutoCAD draft position that it's difficult to know the work that's being performed by that position. So we did make a recommendation that a task audit be performed. And that's an internal audit that would take place where you really look through the day-to-day work that's being performed by that job compared to the description of the and duties of the job description. Because a lot of the work that we found described in the job description didn't appear to be what was being done on a day-to-day basis necessarily. And so that was a really quick whip, and I apologize for if I took too much time, but that's a really quick whip on the high level findings and recommendations and details of which are in the report. And I'm happy to address any additional questions you might have.
Okay, do any board members have any questions or comments at this time?
I just wanted to say thank you for making it so easy to understand. FICMAT is like a language of the board that I had to learn. So this was definitely one of the easier things I could comprehend. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Great.
And I want to thank you for acknowledging at the beginning of your presentation that you wouldn't be commenting about the good things that were happening within these departments, because I believe that we can all attest that there are excellent things that are happening and that we do have very dedicated staff in regards to their work ethic. And I just want to acknowledge that because being the longest serving board member on the board, all of these problems rest on my shoulders, so to speak. But I also want to, and you mentioned budget constraints. Over this period of time, we've also had some major budget constraints, but we are not unique in organizations during budget crisis looking at maintenance and operations first for those reductions. In the long run, we do pay for that expense or that savings differently, and it may actually cost more as you recover from that situation. Goes back to what else can we convince the legislature that we need, and that new bond that's going to be on the ballot will be critical because it could provide matching funds that would help us in doing some of this work. I do appreciate the report. You identified many things that I have been concerned about, but again, it's the momentum of moving forward to implement change. I know we're going to hear more information later from staff about how they plan on addressing this. And I know our bond oversight committee is anxious for us to be able to identify projects and move forward with our Measure J expenditures. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's just going to be, we need a more powerful flashlight as we're moving through it. And I'm hoping that we will be able to resolve many of these issues and improve it. Often we hear comments about the conditions of our landscape or the cleaning in our classrooms. This report identifies why that condition is obvious and people are commenting about it. So, you know, part of me wants to put on my mother hat and say, pick up that piece of trash or pull that weed as you walk by. I know that won't happen, but it is a collective responsibility, and we need to make sure that we're providing the assistance where needed for these individuals that are serving our students in our district. So thank you.
And I would just say that I think for me, it's important that the maintenance and operation people know that this was good for the board to hear. This happened over budget cuts needing to be made, leadership changing. And nobody doubts they're doing the best. They don't have the support they need. Now, our challenge is the support they need is probably more people, and we're in a deficit spending place right now. But there's definitely things I see that we could do that wouldn't cost a lot of money, that not more importantly would help the district, will help those people that have been serving us and probably wanting to be recognized for the hard work they were trying to accomplish, and they haven't been. So I see it really, it sounds negative, but I see it as a positive to shine light on what the issues are so that they can be addressed. So I thank FCMAT and I thank our staff that cooperated and worked with you to get this report together so we can start taking baby steps to get it fixed. Any comments? Go ahead.
I'll jump in. Thank you, Dr. Clark, for your leadership in commissioning this report. Because I think it's, as has been said, this is what we needed to be able to move forward. I felt like for years it's been kind of like, you know, the blindfolded people with the elephant all on different sides. This is a trunk, no, this is a tail. And, you know, you can see pieces of it that need to be fixed, but you can't solve the problem. And you can't blame any one person for it because that's not really the issue. It's the structure of the whole thing. And it's a structural solution that is needed. So looking at, you know, the staffing levels of grounds that, you know, we potentially need 20 more FTE in that area. I mean, thank you to every one of you who are working in grounds right now, because you've been experiencing what it's like to not be able to keep up, and it's not you as an individual, it's not your fault, right? It's the structure of it. It's good. It was good for me to hear that that the pesticides that we are approved to use can work, because that's something also that I know has been a challenge. Feeling like, well, maybe we do need Roundup or something, but we don't. We don't actually need Roundup. What we need is proper training and proper staffing for the approved chemicals that we have in place. So that was really good to see. I'm hopeful because although this identifies a lot of challenges and a lot of things that need to be done, there are some real concrete things that can fix this for the long haul. So looking at centralized water control, for example, is a very specific, you know, one-time investment that can make a huge difference. I know that's a frustration for teachers and parents and students, you know, seeing that sprinkler that's just going like crazy in the middle of a drought, you know, and someone's got to come out and fix it, but they're not here yet. That could be a huge fix. And it's not only something that will save us money, but it saves us, you know, the environment in the middle of the drought in California, which is huge as well. And recognizing the situation of only one sprinkler tech is, yeah, huge. I wonder if, as we look at staffing levels, when you're behind with such a backload, do you aim for the level that you want to be able to reach? Like, you know, level 1 just seems completely not financially feasible for us. But let's say we were aiming to end up at level 3. Should we staff for level 2 to fix the backlog first so that we could hopefully end at level 3? Or what kind of, what do you recommend in a situation like this where there's such a backlog?
Well, I think that's where your strategic planning comes into play, because it's not well, we can pick this off the list and that off the list. And, you know, some things are that easy, but when it comes to staffing, it's not, because there's many factors that come into play, and your fiscal position and your fiscal health and other priority areas all come into play when you're looking at your resources and how you strategically place those. And, you know, if I've been with FCMAT, I'm in my 13th year, and if I put my CDO hat on, you know, I'm always looking at that strategic puzzle, what funding can be used for what and in what way. And then ultimately it's the board's priorities as to what comes first and how we get, you know, we make a plan, and how we proceed to accomplish that plan is not something that we can really make a recommendation of. We can tell you where you stand and what your, objective goal should be, but how you get there really is a board's decision and the leadership of your district to prioritize what's important. And, health and safety obviously comes, as a high priority. And, some of the challenges, especially when we find ourselves in fiscal challenging times, is, looking to cut and looking to reduce as far away from the classroom as possible. But what usually does not follow, and I've seen many, cycles now where we make cuts, but when restoration comes, we don't restore the things that were a necessary part of our overall operations. And it gets left behind, and then we end up so far behind. So again, it's not a recommendation that we can make. We can't tell you how to get there. We can only tell you how to look at the big picture of all the different pieces and, make that conscious effort towards making it better and achieving a goal that's agreed upon, under the leadership of your superintendent. And that's the best recommendation I can give to you.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
trust Dr.
Thank
Clark
you.
will be leading us further in this down the road.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just want to say that, we all work so hard to make sure as a board and as, all the citizens that worked with us, knocking on doors to pass Measure J only a few years ago, not to mention all the previous measures. We really want to make this work. And I think this is such a great tool for us to be able to use with the objectivity of it, and the staffing levels and all of the pieces of it. So I look forward to seeing our next steps as we go forward. Thank you.
I just have a couple of very brief comments. I'd like to agree with Trustee Fowler. I found the report to be incredibly well written and very accessible. So thank you. I really appreciated that. And I also would like to say that I did notice that you managed to sneak in a comment about a positive compliment about our director of M&O. And so I appreciated that because I do think we really have incredibly hardworking members on our team. So thank you for that.
And President Mason, if I could just say a few words. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Plouffe for her work and her patience with us. It took a lot for us just to even be able to prepare to get an accurate report in front of this board. And so again, I want to thank you and your team. FCMAC has an impeccable reputation throughout the state for the work that they do. And so I take these recommendations and their findings, I take them very, very seriously. And I just want to say in a public meeting to the board that this report rests on my shoulders. And this is the fourth department that we've had sort of audited during my time here. We had CCE audit our systemic instructional review. And we also had FCMAC out doing a physical health analysis on our business department and our human resources department, and now the maintenance and operations. And so I really think that we have all the information needed that we need to move forward and really fixing these systemic issues and challenges throughout our district. And I know many of them rely on funding, but I want to look at the culture piece of the district and the people who work in this district and why we're here. We are here to serve children. And the maintenance department and maintenance and operations is just as important as the business department, as our curriculum and instruction department, and as the human resources department and all of our departments. It takes all of us working together. And unfortunately, during these stressful times and there's anxiety and stress, we often focus on things that that are taken away from getting our focus on students. We need to have clean classrooms for our staff to work in and do the work that they need to do so that they can provide the service to our students. We need to have fields that are accessible to our students and to our communities. We need to have safe buildings. All of that needs to be in place. And the district office is not just going to do this. This does not just fall on our shoulders. It falls on everyone's everyone's responsibility to bring this stuff forward. And so it's going to be difficult because some of these things are going to have to be renegotiated. Some of these things are going to have to be reduced. We're going to have to take funds that were meant for something else and put funds into this area. But it's my responsibility as superintendent. I take responsibility for this. I'm not pointing fingers, but now that we know better, we have to do better going forward. And so we have all the studies we need within this district to really start to put that strategic plan in place to move forward and to meet the needs of each and every one of our students in our communities. And so I want to thank FCMAT for as difficult as it is to hear this and to listen to this and to read the report. It is difficult, but it's one of those things where nothing great comes without that hard work and that blood, sweat, and tears that we all got to put into this. And so we will be working with the departments on this and finding a way to meet the needs of our students. And we're going to be coming to this board with some very tough decisions to make in terms of how we get there. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That takes us to our next item, which is facility assessment. Was there comment on this one? Okay. Facility assessment and need prioritization. So do we want to take our public comment first or presentation first?
Public comment, why not?
Okay. 12.2. That's the one we just finished. You want to go ahead? We're taking it after the.
Thank you. The card was put in for the item that was just finished and some comments about the report you were just presented with. The slides you were just presented with included early on the words evaluate management structure. Later in your agenda on 18.2 tonight, so not that item, but a later one, the board is being asked to approve 3 new management positions, 3 new positions that don't exist yet that the district would then employ and over a 3-year period spend $1 million on 3 new managers. Please don't take away from the FCMAT report and those words evaluate management structure the need for more administration for custodians. You don't need more admin for custodians, you need more custodians. You need to pay the custodians that you have at a level that would allow you to fill the vacancies that you have. I've heard the CBO talk to the board about the potential for budget cuts. I think it would be absurd for you to consider adding managers and then making cuts in other areas. The district doesn't need more admin and fewer people doing the work. You need more people doing the work. The district's maintenance and operations employees do good work and they do it well. You should pay them and the people doing the work at our school sites a fair and just wage so that we can recruit a full staff who can then ensure that the maintenance and operations needs of our students and our schools are being met. Also, later in that PowerPoint, there was a slide titled Ongoing and Preventative Maintenance Findings, where the following quote appeared. The department lacks sufficient staffing to perform preventative maintenance. I would go further and say that you do not have adequate systems in place to ensure even immediate needs, not just preventative ones. For example, I read an email today about an entire wing of classrooms at a district school site that has been without working heat since October. Our students deserve to learn in classrooms that have heat. So as you all think about that report and its impact on staffing and what it means for the district and their maintenance and operations, I would encourage you to consider what needs to be done to ensure that we have people working in our schools, that we can recruit and retain the best people to work in our schools so that they can provide for our students the best possible learning environment, because our students deserve the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Clark.
I have Dr. Gonzalez is going to take this next item and she'll introduce staff.
Okay.
I'd like to introduce Eric Moraes. He is our Director of Facilities and Bonds. You haven't seen a lot of him yet since he started with us about 6 months ago, but that is most certainly going to change. And we are joined tonight I know he's watching us from Zoom because he's grounded due to illness, but he did want to let you all know that he is not here tonight because he is ill, but that would be Robert Sidford, and he is our Director of Technology and Innovation. So the presentation that you have here in front of you this evening, although it may seem like transparency, it's less about transparency and more about empowerment. And so what we're going to be doing over a series of board meetings is really sharing this process and subsequent plans that are going to come forward with the board and the community that we expect will help hold us accountable because we strive to do better in all of our departments. And what you're seeing tonight is a step forward in that direction. So I want to give a little bit of context to facilities and planning, and this is sort of odd because I'm the most senior person that's really doing this, and a lot of this precedes me. But back in June of 2018, the board approved the hiring of a company called LPA to create a facility master plan. Shortly thereafter, voters approved $150 million for a facility bond. We call that one Measure J. And then as we continue in chronological order, in May of the following year, the board approved a technology infrastructure information item for approximately $25 million, 20 million of which was from Measure J, to go ahead and start moving forward with some backbone to the system that we already had in place. Continuing on, LPA was asked to do a facility master plan, but in the big scheme of things, what was completed was a facility visioning plan. And this facility visioning plan took a look at all of our sites and said, okay, if we could do many things at all of our sites, what would they be? And at the time, this is in 2019 figures, they came up with a plan that was approximately $1.15 billion. Yet we really just had a little over $150 million in which to start addressing some of what was there. In August, I do want to point out that $150,000 was approved by the board for plan development. This was for the facility master plan to actually go forward. And I want to let everyone know that that money was never used. That's about the time where there were a number of leadership changes. And so Dr. Martinez came in and he said, okay, can we just take a pause on this? And then, other things happened, the pandemic started. And so I just wanted to point out that $150,000 was never spent. Again, leadership turnover, COVID, and then we brought FCMAT in April of last year, with the report finally being completed in December for a number of different reasons. But what was never completed in all of this was a facility master plan, a plan that says, here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to prioritize, here's based on data. And that's what we're starting to get at right now. So really the purpose of this tonight is to give you the historical perspective, to let you know some of what that process is going to look like, what some parameters are that have changed, because the world has really changed a great deal since 2019. So if we go to the next slide, and I'm going to hope that I do Mr. Sidford the level of decency with this slide here, because we all know that he is a technology phenom. But technology is really a key component of this entire plan, because so much of what we do on a daily basis relies on that, not just for the business work, but the teaching and learning that goes on in our district. So we're now one-to-one. Classroom displays have become incredibly important in our classrooms. And so what we did was we embarked on the collecting of real solid data about our network infrastructure. And when we started down this road almost a year ago, realized that there was very little out there that we could even map back. And so what we've learned to do is question all of the data that we see in a very respectful way to say, is this really accurate? Because what we're finding is sometimes things have been passed on over the years and nobody's really gone back to say, is this right? Is this accurate? And should we continue to use it? And he has done a great deal of that. Things like cabling standards. audiovisual standards, even camera standards. What we've done over the years is we haven't had any standards, and we've relied on, companies that we've hired to come in and put in what they think. And what we're doing is we're turning that around to say, we're establishing the standards, and anybody that's going to come in is going to meet these specific standards. And then I think we know this from just the anecdotals from sites all over the district. Our technology infrastructure really does need a great deal of attention. And so what we're doing is we're really just sort of outlining the plan of how we're going to be developing plans as we move forward. And I will turn to Eric for the next couple of slides here.
Thank you for your time, board members. Glad to be here and presenting something to you, to just give you an update on facilities and what we've been working on the last 6 months I've been here. So a lot of that is data collection. Lisa just spoke to this. Some of the data that we collected, well, all the data that we collected was for our elementary, high school, and middle schools, and that's to use and that's for prioritizing our projects moving forward. Some of the data that we collected were the age of building and last modernization date. This data allows us to know the age of the building and also informs us of when the last modification to the site occurred, which also speaks to any unclosed DSA projects that will prevent us from having new projects in the future. I found quite a few of those. Yeah, whole long story there, but it was a lot of work in narrowing that down per site and finding out what's active and not. And then also we looked at the total square footage and acreage of the site. With this data in our enrollment numbers, we're able to create various ratios to determine the classroom usage to students per acreage, to help us assess the maintainability of our campuses. We also looked at the maintenance work orders, and that's another data that we collected that we're using for the scoring of the prioritization of our projects. With that data, it was really important metric in knowing how many open work orders we have per site. While we know how many work orders in total there are per site, we're working now on separating them by category, so electrical, plumbing, and so forth. The academic program needs relative to classroom design and technology. This speaks to what Lisa just spoke to, the one-on-one technology needs for IT. And then also the network age and performance. As Lisa just spoke to, we have an aged network, and it needs to be designed to support our modern day technology needs. We also looked at classroom technology equity, which Lisa spoke to, and the curb appeal of our sites, which includes various deciding factors for parents that are coming to our district and will want to, or future parents that will want to be here. And then that takes us to the methodology of this. And that was just the equity and need and criticality of these prioritizations. And yeah, let me just go to the next slide. Oh yeah, and then, oh, sorry. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So really what we took a look at was, I think some of what the FCMAT report was able to provide is that sometimes we do this one size fits all model, and that doesn't really work. So if you're in elementary and you get this, and you're in middle, you get this, right? What we're trying to take a look at is, what do we really need based on what's there? And so there are some sites that have systems that really aren't up to par, right? And so those are some of the pieces that we've taken a look at. When Eric was speaking about work orders, we really want to make sure that we're taking a look at work orders, and hypothetically speaking, let's say that the air conditioning system, in this building, we think that it's got 3 more years worth of use, but we're having 10 to 12 work orders put in every single month. It's an indicator that we may want to fast track the replacement rather than the investment of all the resources into continuing to try to fix something that isn't working in the first place. And so really, we've spent a good 4 to 5 months just collecting some of this basic data either going back to school sites, walking them, and then really taking a look at the need. And again, the criticality of what is working and what is not working. And everything was getting a ranking. So, usually it's 0 means it's just been replaced. It's within the first few years of, a 15 or 20 year span. 5, it's getting pretty close. And 10, we're up to like about the last year of a specific system working well at a school site.
Yes, and so with that, we look at all of our system life cycles for HVAC, roofing, paving, plumbing, electrical, and through that scoring matrix, we were able to identify these potential projects. One is our building automation systems, so that we'll have a district-wide building automation system that will be able to tell us, the HVAC in each of our campuses. So they'll be able to control the HVAC and lighting. So that's part of a energy conservation project that will also, give us, money on the back end through the conservation efforts there. That goes to the lighting. Roofing, we have just about 15 sites that don't have new roofs. And so that's the remaining amount of sites that we have to do for roofing. Exterior painting, that's just something that we have to do, district-wide. Going to through the site assessments and, going to the sites and seeing how, we have paint peeling off, and it's just not a good look. And then that speaks to the curb appeal earlier. HVAC to multi-use rooms and kitchens. I would love for there to be HVAC in here right now. So it'd be nice to have that for our kitchen staff, for when we hold events at, the sites. So that would definitely be a project that is a must-have for the district. And then also, the technology and infrastructure. We don't have the backbone to support a lot of the technology that we would like the displays in the classrooms. We won't be able to support that on the current, internet capabilities that we have, regarding the network. And then all of these projects here will be eligible for state funding. So, there is, something that we can get back from the money that we're spending. So we have a little bit more to spend elsewhere on other projects.
So what you're going to see as a result of this presentation tonight, we're doing a couple of listening sessions with the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for Measure J, because Measure J is, a fairly large funding source that can go to support many of these projects. So what we're going to be bringing next week is basically a rating system. So we've taken a look at every big system in the district, every single school site, all of our other facilities as well. We've ranked that, and we're in the process right now of tallying up as many of those data points. There's still a few that we can't get that we're working on, so they'll probably be tentative, to bring to you next week some prioritized sort of bigger projects before we try to go deeper into our first round of a facility, not the facility master plan, of the deferred maintenance plan. So if I can just go to this next slide. Again, we really want to have a roadmap. I know at times, I'm pushing the team to really get a lot of these things done, but we know that time is of the essence to at least bring you some suggestions, have you take a look at those. We're going to bring some recommendations based on the data that we have so that we can start getting projects in the hopper. Because once we start doing that, we need to look at all the funding sources to figure out how we can multi-fund, make sure that every single possible eligible remodernization project goes up to the state, and that we have properly completed all the paperwork to at least get that in line. And so really what this is going to look like right now is our listening meetings are going to continue for the next 2 days with the CBOC on our rankings. We have a board meeting next week. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be bringing a very brief overview of what FCMAT provided tonight. It's going to be one of the matrices, just like you've seen before, the one that's technology has been using, the one that we've been using for fiscal health, to bring you updates. The first one will be next week. And then we're also going to bring forward the facilities project planning. So again, a prioritization with these numbers to say, these are some of our really high need sites. And then at February 2nd, what we're planning on doing is bringing forward phase 2. So some of you have been here long enough to remember that we started phase 1. Phase 1 was the beginning of the commissioning, which meant that half of our school sites had controls that can be controlled centrally. Except the commissioning for that, which basically means turning them all on and bringing them on board, is part of phase 2. So we've got to get phase 2 started and ended so all of these new controls can be controlled centrally so that we can look at it and say, okay, this classroom at this school site, the AC or the heat is not working, we can send someone out to do that. Right now, we can't do that. We actually have to have, we can't look at anything centrally. So somebody's got to go out, they've got to look at the temperature and see how it's working. And that is not the direction we want to go. So we're going to be bringing forward that phase 2, as well as a proposal for LED lighting for a number of reasons at that February 2nd meeting. And then we are looking at bringing a deferred maintenance plan, at least a higher level, before we start delving in, because prices have changed. Supply chain issues have become a major consideration as well. And we know that that $1.15 billion from back in 2019 has probably gone up considerably. We've got Measure J, we have a little bit, some of the funds from Measure A we can use for this. We've got a little bit of Measure C that's left over that may or may not cover some of these projects. We've got routine restricted maintenance, and we have one that we have developer fees. And our goal is to really use those along with what's allowable with ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 right now to really be able to maximize these funds and try to move forward with projects as quickly as we can. The other thing that we're really committed to doing is going into a school site and doing things one time, because it is not a good use of district and taxpayer resources to go into a school site and do technology infrastructure and then 2 years later have to go back in and do something else that's going to be using the same exact locations, the same exact wiring, and the same exact disruption to what goes on at the school site. So this is the direction we're headed. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. I expect that Measure J is going to be seeing a lot more special meetings and listening sessions so that we can really get their input. And although they're not overseeing all of the funds, it really is important for us to be able to make sure that they are instilled with confidence to believe that the direction we are going with the assistance of this FCMAT plan is really the way that we need to be working. So with that, we are happy to open it up for any questions that you may have.
Any questions? No, it looks like we got one down there. Trustee Cowan.
Thank you. Thank you for this. I look forward to seeing the implementation moving forward. It's great to see a plan and a structure in place. I just had a question in the list of potential projects. One of the things that we heard back when LPA was looking at all of our school sites and doing the facilities master plan was that there are some things that are real basic to our sites that are not as exciting maybe for the community to hear about, but that are really important, like the underlying electrical and plumbing systems that are just really aging, and that's kind of a major expensive thing to fix, but at some point you can't ignore it anymore. And so I wonder where that fits in, and it seems like that, like plumbing could end up being a health and safety criticality if it reaches that in particular sites. And so with what you were saying about looking at work orders, if at a particular site you're seeing like, wow, the plumbing is constantly backing up at this site, it's not actually that toilet, it's actually deeper underground kind of situation. Where does that fit in? I didn't hear much about sort of plumbing issues. Are those not as critical as some of the other issues?
Yeah, a lot of our sites have cast iron plumbing underground just because of the age of them. And then with the growth underneath from trees and everything, we constantly happens where they get punctured and then, we have a leak. And so we're still assessing that. That's going to be part of our we'll be adding that to it. We're just, at a surface level as far as like the work orders, as far as we just have the number, and then we're gonna have to clearly identify, the plumbing needs. Yeah.
I would also say that just because we have that list that's on that one slide doesn't mean that other things aren't there. We probably could have added 3 or 4 additional items, including plumbing, but that is on our matrix that we're taking a look at as well, because we realize how important that is. And we're trying to find a balance between some things that the public can see, right? Because that is important, right? They want to know that it's, tech infrastructure may not be something that's super sexy, or, the back end of toilets. But at the end of the day, if we can do other things that also beautify our campuses and make them more appealing from the outside, we know that that's important too. So we're trying to find that balance with the precious funds that we do have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're to board member reports. So Trustee Fowler, would you like to start us off?
Mine's rather short. My break was really relaxing. I was in quarantine due to COVID. So any students or staffs, if you're exposed to COVID, don't feel bad or like ashamed. I feel like that's one of the many things people feel when they get COVID. It's obviously like a very highly contagious virus, so there's no shame in it at all, but please do not go to school knowing you've been exposed, or if you have symptoms. I don't think that's okay. And please just stick to your quarantine protocols. It's to ensure safety for everyone else and to help stop the spread of COVID. So that was just a reminder. Over break, I did an interview via Zoom with the Elk Grove student board member. She's great. She's very well established in her district as well. And I just talked about what I do in the California Student Board Member Association and how the National Student Board Member Association is going. And it's going pretty well. We have over 60 members. I think it's at 68 as of now, and our first meeting is on Saturday. So I get to hear from student board members all across the US, and I believe one from Tennessee is speaking, and they have full voting rights. So that'll be very interesting. And then another one from Maryland is speaking, and they also have full voting rights. So.
Thank you. Trustee Mayo?
Thank you. I'm editing my notes.
Okay.
Sorry. I want to take this opportunity to wish everyone a happy new year, at least in your dreams. Right now, we're already facing so many different issues because of the pandemic. The pandemic is trying to show us who is boss, but we're going to figure out how to get through this yet. So thank you for your ongoing support. On December 6th, I was able to attend the Measure Bond Oversight Committee meeting, and the FCMAT report was presented to members. They asked a lot of questions, and they were informed about staff's progress in mapping our sites for building square footage, and condition, usable play and athletic surfaces, utilities, and more. As a credit to staff, they displayed the spreadsheet to the members, and it went from here to there. To the wall over there based on the columns, and I'm exaggerating, but it is a very complicated system that they are using. And we'll have an opportunity to look at it and think about what we have seen as we visited campuses, and then provide feedback to staff. So I do appreciate the work that they're doing regarding that mapping, because mapping is not an easy thing to do. And additional information will be presented at the next meeting. I wasn't aware of the listening sessions until yesterday, so I'm excited to be able to participate in one of those listening sessions. Last night, I was able to attend the Community Advisory Committee meeting following our board governance workshop. Dr. Aguili presented a presentation on bullying, what it is, what it looks like, how it's hidden, and provided parent tips to help children, and how parents can work with schools when bullying occurs at our schools or on our buses. As always, she emphasized it's important to listen to your child, be patient, and listen over time. When an incident occurs, the child may not always know how to describe the experience, and we must continue to listen and gently ask questions so that the full story is shared so you can best help your child. She did share that she would be willing to provide this presentation at school sites. Please don't flood her calendar immediately because we need her energy for many other projects, but it is an important topic, and I hope that our PTAs and PFCs are looking for resources around providing these presentations for parents. The Bridge program is looking forward to the installation of a workplace experience stations that we approved earlier on our agenda. And that installation will start next week, and the students and staff are very excited. So there'll be something exciting for us to go and look and see how the students are involved in that particular program. The CAC is accepting nominations for the popular You Make a Difference Awards. These awards are presented to persons or organizations that have made outstanding contributions to the lives of special education students in Mount Diablo. The application can be found at mdusd.org/CAC or contact Melody Royale or Dr. Aguili or one of the CAC officers. This is a very outstanding and heartwarming ceremony, so I hope that everyone will participate. The governor has released his proposed budget, and members of the Education Coalition have responded, so I hope you're reading all the press articles about it. Our legislators will want to make their mark with constituents regarding the use of surplus funds. It's important that all of us watch this process very closely. In my opinion, the best use is increasing the LCFF funding base, and I didn't talk to Dr. Clark ahead of time about this, for all school districts throughout California. Bookmark your legislators' websites to watch for their positions and legislation that they may introduce. We need to fasten our seatbelts and voice our opinions in the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Nzewi?
It's like we coordinated this. So I watched the governor's budget presentation this Monday, which is, as Trustee Mayo indicated, though not explicitly, is just the beginning of this very long journey we have until a final budget is passed and signed in June. But there was much to be very optimistic about, given what he proposes, given the $45.7 billion with a B dollar surplus that California is experiencing, and in his own words, that it's likely to even go up by May for May revise after taxes are collected. He also, though, proposed funding schools based on a 3-year average of our average daily attendance, which would prevent the funding cliff that nearly every public school district in our state is facing with the next school year, including ours. But even more, just as exciting is that last week, Senator Portantino introduced a bill that would instead base school funding on enrollment instead of attendance. And so why all of this is really important is that both proposals, the governor and a legislator, are both thinking about how to prevent the basic catastrophe that is before us come June unless action is taken. And so knowing that besides the cost of living allowance that I didn't even know if I mentioned that the governor proposed, and these two solutions, which I wouldn't even call competing, they're just two different ideas to a really big problem, but it's coming from both parts of our government that governs, that we will likely end up in June with some sort of meaningful solution that will benefit not only our district, but public education throughout California. And it would put us in a better position to to address the FICMAT matters, to you creatively, as Dr. Gonzalez gave different ways that we could possibly pay for all of these projects, but it brings in more money overall so that we can pay our employees what they deserve, pay our, like we said, custodians and whatnot to actually be paid for the work and be able to recruit them for the work they do. So we are competitive in our community. So that was a sort of a good way to start a Monday, I think. So this week, despite the 4 hours that the governor was on. Oh, shoot. Okay, I'll toot my own horn. I was accepted into the School Board Partners Fellowship Program, which my cohort includes 35 other school board members from across the country. And this fellowship will provide a community of practice, mentorship and coaching and training on how to be an effective anti-racist school board member. And I'll have access to sample policies and toolkits and the shared experiences of my cohort and previous fellowship cohorts. I'm in the 4th cohort. I'm joined by 2 other California Joint Board members, both who are from Northern California. And I think that's really important because that'll expand my own network of board members working their way through similar challenges in the same state, like with, and who share similar mindsets. So my learning begins this month, and I'm really eager to bring that knowledge and skill set to my work on this board. And finally, this has been, well, almost finally, this has been quite a week back and will likely turn into being quite a month back. So I want to send my sincerest gratitude to everyone weathering this newest storm. And I continue to hope that all of us allow ourselves grace and allow others grace while we endure these challenges. Last week, I had a great conversation with an MDUSD educator, and as we talked about challenges and triumphs within the district, what became clear to me because of her explicitly saying this is that we need to cultivate a culture of yes. When we're steeped and so used to doing things one way because that's how it's always been done, that often puts up unnecessary barriers to progress. And in these most difficult times and long into the future, I hope we can embrace a default of the thoughtful yes instead of the knee-jerk no. And finally, continue to wear your masks, get your children vaccinated, your preteens, teens, and yourself boosted. There's boosters available at La Clinica Friday. So if you go on there, you can find appointments. Err on the side of caution, as Trustee Fowler expressed, staying home if you've been exposed or have symptoms, and continue to utilize the tests that are available if your school still has them, and go to one of our testing sites. Also, if you do contract COVID, tell the people around you, who you've been around, so they can do what they need to do to care for themselves and their families.
Thank you. Trustee Farron.
All right, good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. The last week before winter break was finals with shorter school days, so I was able to visit a TK class at Silverwood. And I want to acknowledge that in my perspective, teaching high school and teaching elementary school are completely different jobs. So I have really endless admiration for elementary school teachers who have incredibly complex roles. And I'm really reminded of this every time I set foot on an elementary school, and I just still marvel at just the tiny backpacks and whatnot. So I want to thank Ms. Swanson for inviting me to observe and for taking time to discuss the framework for transitional kindergarten, as well as her perspective and experience around best practices within the instructional program. At our last meeting, Vice President Zawi mentioned play-based learning, and so I was able to observe this practice in Ms. Swanson's class. It was fascinating to see what differentiation looks like in a classroom with such young students and to reflect on how it compares to the same practice that I do at the high school level with the students that I serve. I was impressed by the setup and the working flow of the class, and I hope that I can visit again soon. I want to emphasize that I always feel safe and welcome on the Silverwood campus, and I appreciate the efforts that our staff there has made to build and maintain such a positive school culture and learning environment for our kids. Also, before the break, I was able to attend the Student Advisory Committee meeting. And Trustee Fowler, I want to thank you for continuing to develop this group. The meeting was very well organized and centered around diversifying the core and extended novels list for the district. Trustee Fowler also mentioned that school clubs, especially at the middle school level, will be a topic for ongoing discussion. I know that clubs really help students build friendships and feel connected to their school community. So I really appreciate that that's a priority for the group. And I noticed one middle school student in attendance, and I hope that more middle schoolers and other students will join the group. So I look forward to hopefully being able to attend the next meeting. I was able to attend the Budget Advisory Committee meeting and the CAC meeting last night. Trustee Mayo talked about the CAC meeting and gave a really good report on it. I do want to just compliment the group for always selecting really relevant topics that seem to resonate with the group. And so I just look forward to seeing what the next topics are for discussion. Also, I am just keeping my head above water as a teacher these days. I do want to address people being out, and I want to thank them. Thank you. If you're sick, please don't go to school. As a teacher, it's actually a lot more work for me to be absent, which is why in the last 2 school years, I've not taken any of my 10 sick days that I'm allotted per year. And so staying home when you're not healthy is really going to help us keep schools open. So teachers, other staff members, students, thank you for staying home. If you're sick, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Trustee Count?
All right, I'll be brief tonight. I enjoyed the break, going completely offline for a few weeks, and I hope some of the rest of you got to also cut the cord for a little bit. It was very grounding for me and a great way to take a really full mental break, both in the great outdoors and also with my family. So really appreciated that time. The main thing that I wanted to share is that we've planned our next Contra Costa County School Boards Association meeting for next Thursday, January 20th from 5:30 to 7:30. And we'll have guest speaker Dennis Myers to have an open discussion with us about the governor's budget and how it really looks from a school board member's perspective. And we'll also hear from our County Office of Education about their new WISP program, which is their Wellness in Schools program for mental health. And that's it for me tonight.
I too will be very brief. I hope everybody had a restful holiday season. I know I did. I was able to attend the IB listening session that they had. That was very interesting. I also listened in on the Measure J listening session that they had about the report we got tonight. And I was at the study session last night. And I would just like to take a minute to thank Dr. Clark, because at our last meeting, he announced to us that they had ordered lots of rapid tests for at home. And a few days later, I'm hearing that this is what everybody's recommending. And so I thanked him over the break and said, thank you for being ahead of it. Thank you for getting them out to our families. Thank you for last week, I think it was, or the beginning of this week, being out there personally handing them out to families. I really think that you've done a really good job of trying to stay ahead of this. I don't see COVID going away. I see COVID as a way of life. And I keep hearing, and I feel that Dr. Clark agrees with this, what I keep hearing on different doctors saying, schools should be the first to open and the last to close, that we can do this safely if we just set that as our course. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for your report.
I know.
No, just because my report tonight is going to pretty much primarily consist of COVID information. And so I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me and talking through the mask and whatnot. I just want to make sure that the message gets along. So again, we find ourselves here once again, right? As things are, looking up for us, and as, we think there's, light at the end of the tunnel. There was guidance about, if you're vaccinated in a small group of folks, you can go maskless. mask mandates were getting ready to be lifted throughout the county and in different places throughout the state and whatnot. And then all of a sudden we start getting ready for break, and voila, out of nowhere, a new variant comes along. And so, so that's what we're going to be talking about. But before I begin, I just, as always, I want to revisit these LCAP goals of why we are here, why we do the work that we do, and it's all around our students, right? And so that goal number one, that high quality education is key in making sure that our students are safe and that we have welcoming environments for our students with high expectations, and also making sure that we have high quality staff that are culturally proficient and that are responsive to the needs of our students. And then again, that we are engaging with parents and families and our community at large and keeping them empowered and informed. And so one of the things that I'm hoping to do with all the challenges that come with COVID is to continue to keep folks informed of what's going on. And that's very difficult to do because things keep changing. I also, since we were talking about reports earlier, this was also a result of our instructional, systemic instructional review. And so again, we want to focus on learning acceleration, again, a growth mindset as we look at our students. We want to make sure that we're providing educational equity throughout the district and that we're focusing on our students' social emotional learning and taking families and parents and community in mind when we do that. So this last 6 days, last 2 weeks since we've been back, I mean, administrators were back a little earlier, but it's been all hands on deck. Every last employee in this district has been stretched, and everyone is stepping up and really doing what needs to happen in order to serve our students. And so I really want to give that hats off to the entire district, all staff within the district, for really stepping up. I also just want to recognize our parents and families, right? This is a traumatic event for them as well, as they're trying to raise a family, go to work, and they need to feel confident that their kids are in a safe and welcoming environment. And so our parents and community continue to partner with us and partner with their schools, their individual classroom teachers, and different clubs and organizations at the school. And so I want to recognize all of us as a team of really facing this challenge that we're facing. As President Mason spelled out earlier, as a district, it wasn't me, I'm just a superintendent, I have a great team, but we were able to get our hands on some of the at-home tests. And it's just so amazing as we're dealing with COVID, because 6 months ago, if we even came up with the idea of giving everyone a home test, like, people would have thought we were crazy, right? And so, and even as we were discussing these home tests of sending them home before break, even that was kind of an idea that was out there. But I give all credit to staff on that. I just was there to support. But really, in an effort to keep our students and staff safe, we were able to get our hands on 28,000 tests, and we sent them out to the school sites, and they were available for students. Some staff had them, students took them home to families and whatnot. And so they were able to take these home during the break and hopefully use them and, be able to keep themselves and their families safe. And that was the primary reason for us distributing those. So during the break, and again, things happen. So in the middle of the break, I received an email from the county office that the governor has provided student test kits, and he really designated these for students, and they were going to be delivered over the holiday break to the county office, and then it was up to the districts to work with the county office on getting those. And so working with our folks from the warehouse, we were able to get close to 30,000 tests over the holiday break. And then we were able to assemble a team and a plan to distribute those tests to our families. And Monty Gardens was one of the places was the place that we handed them out. And we had staff come in and work, even though it was they were still on vacation for some of these staffs, but they came in and standing right outside of this room, we were able to distribute over 8,000 kits to families. Unfortunately, we had some staff that came through that wanted kits, and we had to break the news to them that they were only for students, and so that was something that, you know, again, we were just trying to follow the guidelines that were set in front of us. But we did distribute over 8,000 kits in an 8-hour, I think it was supposed to be 9 to 4, but you know, these are parents, they were lined up out here early, and we wanted to get them off the street, so we started doing that. So with the leftover 22,000 kits, we then divided those up and we sent them out to the school sites for the principals, staff at the sites to distribute those, to send those home to our students. We're in the process of trying to purchase more tests. Again, the prices have been raised, the supply chain isn't there, but we have a wonderful purchasing department who's really working with our vendors, trying to get a hold of more tests that we can continue to use and get out to folks. And so, again, the tests were distributed for volunteer use for students. They were not under a mandate. It was completely voluntary. There was no mandate that students had to take these tests and present us with a positive, with a negative, or you know, a negative result in order to re-enter school. So there was a lot of confusion with that going back to school, but we were going to welcome back all of our students no matter what. But if they tested positive, we were asking them to contact the schools and to keep them home. So and like I said before, these tests were designated for students only. They were not for staff or adults. So that is our testing. There's been talk about masks. You know, we have provided the surgical mask. That's what I'm wearing now, and we have examples of that on the screen there. And so the surgical masks are the masks over on the right. All along, we have had staff that require, there are some staff in our district that require N95s. And so we have N95s for them, and we've been providing those N95s to them throughout this pandemic as we allowed students to come back onto our campuses. They've been provided with those N95 masks. However, just over the weekend, or actually as I was leaving my office at 5:30 on Friday, I received an email from the county office that said, we are getting ready to receive a shipment from the state of N95 masks. How many would you like? And so all the superintendents in the county got that. So I sent them our student count, our staff count, and I said, give us as many as you possibly can. So those got delivered over the weekend. They were delivered to the county. They were delivered to the county office, and we have been working with the county to go and either pick those up or have them delivered to our warehouse. And so we're in the process of getting those N95 masks and sending them out to school sites. And we're just going to send them out to school sites. We're going to ask the principals to put them in the staff room, and then they can distribute them how they see fit, or have any adult on campus who wants to come get a couple of them, that they can do that. They have student masks, but they're not designed for the really, really small students. They won't fit on their face. So, but whatever student masks we get, we're going to make those available to our students. And so that should be happening. The process is happening. It started yesterday, but those should be out of school sites today, tomorrow, or definitely, hopefully by Friday. Not 100% sure on that. So that is our what we're doing around face coverings. We are committed to keeping our schools open. We, again, all the advice that we are getting from public health is that schools are the safest place for kids to be in a pandemic. Not that being at home alone or with your parents is not safe, but if kids have to leave the house, being at school is where it needs to happen. And I think we all learned the very painful mistake of what happens when you close schools to students. And I think we were dealing with the fallout from that, starting when we opened our schools up this year to start the school year. And so we're going to work like heck for that not to happen. And so these are the things that are sort of in place. So masks are required. in all indoor spaces, right? And I know there was debates about that. There is no debate about it. We have to wear a mask at all times as we're indoors. Masks are highly recommended outdoors. We haven't put out a mandate saying that they have to wear them outdoors, but they're highly recommended. And so, so again, you know, we're trying to do what we can to, you know, to support folks. Not everyone believes in wearing a mask. I mean, we have to take these folks into consideration as well. And if people need to take their masks outside where it's safer, then again, you know, that can take place. But we highly recommend that that masks are worn outside. We still are running our district testing centers. You know, I was out on Friday at our testing center here at the Dent Center on Friday afternoon, talking to folks who were there to get tested. Those are still happening. We're still running our tests at Willow Creek and throughout the district. And so those are still happening. So we still have our testing centers that are open to staff and open to students. And so we can continue to test our staff and students. Hand sanitizing, we still have pallets and pallets of hand sanitizer. You know, I was in the warehouse earlier in the week. I saw the PPE equipment that we have. I saw the hand sanitizing. We have this stuff and we're putting it out at sites. And so it's there. So again, as we continue to hand sanitize. Quarantine, isolation, and contact tracing is still taking place. Now, I have to say that the week between December 25th and December 31st, new guidance came out, right? So that's like the ideal time to put out new guidance at schools. And so that guidance came out, and then as we returned to work on that first Monday of January, the guidance was still changing, and it still changed up until last Friday afternoon. It was still changing. We finally sent out an update on Monday, and right after we hit send, I get another notice from the county that they have to update something else. And so what we're trying not to do is to continue to send out our families, hey, this is the guidance on Monday at 4 o'clock. This is the guidance on Tuesday at noon. This is guidance on Friday, because it continues to change. So we're really trying to keep our families updated, but not inundate them and confuse them with more and more. And so so the guidance is there. The quarantine, you know, those went from 10 days down to 5 days, but then there's all these rules around it. Are you vaccinated? Are you vaccinated but booster eligible? Are you boosted? All these types of things. And so it is really, really confusing. And again, I have to give kudos to staff, all of our staffs, because we have, you know, everyone is dealing with this, and our families, you know, most importantly, those are the ones who are really trying to read through all of this information and get the best possible information they can for their students. So our filters are still there, and again, you know, open windows and doors when possible, and move activities outdoor whenever possible. So those things really have not changed throughout this entire pandemic, and there is no magic bullet of how we're going to address this. COVID is here to stay, and shutting down our schools really is not an option if we truly have the best interests of our students in mind. So we have to continue to be very disciplined in wearing our masks and sanitizing and testing, quarantining, and you know, using outside spaces whenever possible. That hasn't changed, and so so we just want to continue that. There has been a high need for substitutes. So I get contacted by the press every single day, and they ask me, well, they contacted myself and Teresa. I recognize your laugh back there. They contact us every single day, and all they want to know is how many teachers are absent. That's what they ask me. So I do the best I can. I give them our numbers, and I give them our you know, we're averaging about 100 teacher absences a day. They don't want to hear about they don't necessarily even want to hear about the student absences. They don't want to necessarily hear about the classified absence. They want to know the teacher absences, because there's talk out there in the news. This is the top news story when you you know, when you turn on your local news. And you know, we were going through this a while back when our schools were shut down. That we were having these same discussions on the news. I was interviewed for Cron TV today, and I was on the news myself and the San Ramon superintendent. We were both asked the exact same questions. How many teachers were absent today? How many unfilled positions did you have? The San Ramon superintendent was asked that as well, and we were both on the same on the same news show. So I'm giving that information. We have approximately, and this number hasn't changed, we have approximately 50 unfilled teaching positions per day for subs. And again, it's all hands on deck. Students are being split up and going to other teachers' classes. At the secondary level, teachers are giving up their preps. They get paid the sub rate for covering a class, but they are going in during their prep periods and covering classes. We have some administrators who are covering classes. It's all hands on deck with everyone. We're really just trying to get through this big surge. Classified positions are highly impacted as well. It's not just the teachers in the classrooms. We have classified positions are out. We have bus drivers who are out, SEAs that are out. I mean, I could just go on. Every working category unit has people out who are quarantining or who are sick or taking care of other people who are sick. When the press asks me, is this all COVID related? I just say, it's sick. And I'm not deciphering who's positive, who's negative, who's quarantining, who's isolating, who's taking care of someone else. I don't go into that, right? And then we've had the same thing with students. We've had roughly about 4,000 students absent per day. I did make an error with one of our, with some reporters who contacted me, and I told them that half of that number was absent, but I was only referring to one half of the report. And then once I realized what I had done, I sent both of those news agencies the updated student numbers, just for full transparency. But those students who are absent, if they're going to be absent 3 to 14 days, they need to contact their teacher and get the short-term independent studies. So that process is known at every site. First point of contact is the teacher. Teacher will work with students and families on that. And then the office managers will then has 30 days to get that contract signed with those families. So we want to make sure that folks are taking advantage of the short-term independent study. But again, we're committed to keeping our schools open, and you know, there hasn't been any talk about closing schools or anything like that. I was also asked today, you know, and I'm going to bring this up just with full transparency. I was asked by a reporter today, were these absences organized because we're having difficulty we're in disagreements at the negotiating table? And I told them, I have not heard anything like that. There's no evidence of that. And these are only sick days. And so I just want to be very clear that that is not something that we are seeing in Mount Diablo. It's not even something that has crossed our mind here. So all transparency, putting that out there. So my message to parents or staff is to continue to visit the website for the latest information. We're going to try to update our information as much as possible. There's been questions about the dashboard. Okay, so there's a process for putting positive cases on the dashboard, and we are way behind. So the dashboard is not 100% accurate. We've been in school. This is our 6th day. I shared with you before, we're averaging 150 teachers out every day. We're averaging about that same number of classified staff, and we're averaging about 4,000 students a day out. So we are not focusing all day long on updating the dashboard. We are putting our efforts towards making sure that we're getting support out to the school sites, and that we are filling vacant positions, and that we're taking care of supporting our principals with contact tracing and trying to stay safe ourselves as we're doing this work. But the dashboard will be updated. People just got to give us some grace. I mean, right? Like we're keeping the schools open. Everyone's stretched thin. We have a huge, we have, many of our students who are out, and we're trying to do the best we can. We will get it updated. So we're just asking people to just show a little patience with us on that, and we'll get that open. We'll get that updated. And then of course, the Parent Square messages that are being sent out by the superintendent's office, and the Friday letter, but then also the school messages. And I know that teachers principals, staff, they're sending messages out to their families as well. And so we just need to keep communicating during these difficult times, and and we will get there. So I'd like to open it up to any questions. If you have any questions about what I've shared or any other thing that's pertinent to a superintendent's report.
Thank you for this report. I do have a few questions. You mentioned that the N95 masks are going out to school sites soon, and that they'll be available for teachers and staff. What about students who, like high school age students who could wear the masks? Are they going to be able to get them?
Yeah, well, we have designated student masks, and so once we receive them and get them out there, then it'll be up to the schools on how they're going to hand them out. But as many masks as we have, we'll give those out to students, and they do have student masks, and so those will be going out to students.
Also, I'm curious about the dashboard, because I've received a lot of feedback about it. And I am really concerned that if it's not updated, it can kind of lull people into a false sense of safety at their school site. And so I'm wondering if there could be more transparency about like when it's going to be updated, or that it hasn't been updated, and kind of something of that nature, just so that people know that there could be a delay in some of those numbers.
I will bring that to staff. I mean, personally, I think we ought to take the dashboard down until it's fully updated. But again, I got two people who work on the dashboard, and we'll continue to work on that, or put a blurb on there that says being updated or whatnot. We're not required to have a dashboard. I mean, that is something that we do just to try to help folks. But we'll take that into consideration and see what we can do with that.
I have one last perspective to share with a question. I'm curious, like when a teacher or other staff member is notified that they're a close contact, what's the process, or how would they go about getting a rapid test? Are we doing what we can at our school sites to make those available and accessible to, it can be really hard to find an appointment, or to go somewhere off site to have to take time off, or find time to go to get a test when you've been potentially exposed at work. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so we don't have any more rapid tests for staff. So the advice we're giving staff when that happens is they can go to our testing centers, and they can go and get one of those tests. We probably have less than 100. We probably have about less than 100 or so of the tests that went out in that first batch that weren't necessarily tied directly to students. But how I divide that up amongst the entire district, I'm not sure of that. And so again, we're still offering the PCR testing at our sites, but at this time, until we're able to purchase more tests, we don't have tests for staff.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, that takes us to our consent agenda, which will be approved in whole unless board members or someone from the public wants to pull any items from the consent agenda. I have two. I would like to pull 1512 and 1513. Are there any other items? Hearing none, then I'll entertain a motion for the rest of the agenda.
Madam President, I move the consent agenda be approved as presented, with the exception of 1512 and 1513, which will be considered separately.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Trustee Fowler?
Yes.
And that passes 5 with consenting a vote by our student board member. It's been a while. This has been always a pet peeve of mine. 1512 and 1513 are both about field trip well, actually not field trips, dances. And I always want to know that anybody interacting with our kids anywhere have been fingerprinted. And I noticed on both of these, they checked the box that said there would be no contact with our students. Yet one of the events is providing a DJ and a karaoke and security guards. The other is providing a security guard and staff. I don't see how there would be no contact with students in that environment. So I don't know the timeliness of this, if it would be able to go back and they could have we've done this before. And then I'm surprised this company doesn't know it by now. I've sent it back many times. We want to know that your staff has been fingerprinted if they're interacting with our kids on or off our campuses, in my opinion. So that's my issue. The rest of if the rest of the board is interested in moving it ahead, they do that. I will just vote no, or possibly we could pull it for the next meeting. I'm thinking since the events aren't happening till the spring, they'll probably be okay.
Yes.
Okay,
If that's the board wishes, we can pull both those items.
okay.
Yeah.
Anybody have any objections? Okay, thank you. Now they're forewarned. I will be looking at that box every time it comes before us. And I will bring it up, and I'm okay with always being the only, or sometimes being the only no vote, but that's just part of being a board and getting along together. Is that for this item? Nope, okay. So now we are to our business and action items. The first is review and potential approval of update to the board on policy 617. I can't read with my glasses or without because they're fogging up. 6171.1. Dr. Clark.
Yeah, so this is just an update. It is an action item. I believe this is the second reading on this item. And so we're just asking for approval. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Okay.
Madam President, I would move that the board adopt board policy 6170.1 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? Nope. Trustee Fowler?
Yes.
It's not cooperating? Yeah. Just going to wait a moment for technical difficulty. Okay. Correct. Okay, that passes 5 with concurrence from our school board member, student school board member. I hate saying that because she's a full school board member as far as I'm concerned. All righty. 18.2, review of job description as specified in comprehensive coordinated early intervening services plan, Dr. Clark.
Yeah, so as you know, we have our SACE plan, and we are required within that plan to set aside certain amount of dollars to address the disproportionality that we have within the district and within our plan. These positions are part of that plan. So if there's any questions, this is only an info item, and we'll be bringing this back. We'll be bringing this back at the next meeting.
Okay. Any questions from members of the board? Does not look like it. Thank you for that. Next, 18.3, we have a public comment. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you. 18.3 asks the board to increase the amount that you pay to a day-to-day substitute from what is currently $170 a day up to $230 a day. And it states that this would be in aid of helping you recruit substitutes in the current situation. I think that it is beneficial for the district to actively recruit and retain qualified substitutes to be in the classroom when they are needed. It is a good thing. I am concerned that between June of last year and today, the board will have been asked to increase substitute pay by 96% when you've only offered your educators 7% over a 6-year period. Please consider that. Also, Medea, as the bargaining unit that represents certificated educators who substitutes stand in place of, presented the district with a demand to bargain this issue because of its impact on our members who may be on leave and what's called differential pay. We bargained this issue, but it did not get settled. The district's team, the board's team, never responded to our proposal. What you're being asked tonight to look at says, we're not going to change the differential pay so it's not violating, right, what it is that Medea had asked about. That is a good thing. We are thankful, right? It's the reason why I'm not saying, hey, here is an unfair labor practice tonight, right? Because what you're being presented with says, let's increase the rate, but we're not going to change the differential we pay to someone out who's out on leave because they are sick or they had a catastrophic illness or they're on maternity leave or et cetera. So I'm glad for that. But I want to give you the same warning that I shared with your HR chief today, which is if we find out that that isn't the case, you have immediately committed an unfair labor practice. Please don't do that. And so I received assurances that people were going to be paying attention. I'm thankful for that. I'm hopeful that that ends up being the case. But we want you to know that we asked to settle this issue and your team said, no, we're going to move it to the board without settling it. So it is unsettled. And so please take care of all of your employees. Do what you can to attract and retain qualified substitutes who can be there when our students need them. Consider the fact that you're increasing sub pay by 96%, but only offering your employees 7%. And please don't commit an unfair labor practice by messing with the differential rate at its $170 a day amount now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so I have Mr. Sheehy that's going to present this item to the board. We're very excited to bring this forward. And as you know, district did receive one-time money, and I think that this is an appropriate use of one-time money. There's an end date to this, and so again, Mr. Sheehy.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we are looking to increase the substitute daily rate from $170 to $230, and from the special circumstances and retiree rate from $180 to $250. In looking and doing the research at the first time that we wanted to bring it to the board, we did look at the current sub rates in surrounding districts. This rate will not put us at the highest, but it will not put us at the lowest either. While we recognize that subs do not only sub in a district based off of pay, we recognize that it is a good attractant to come to our district. I have sent out correspondence to all our school sites just recently, reminding them of why substitutes come and stay in our schools is by building a relationship and providing some tips on how to do that. So we do recommend increasing the substitute rate as an attractant to get subs in our schools. As Dr. Clark shared earlier, with averaging about 50 unfilled classrooms a day, we want to attract subs into Mount Diablo Unified because we know that we have filled classrooms that is going to make it better for all employees in our district and our students.
Thank you.
And if I could just add is that nothing takes the place of a permanent teacher in a classroom, and this is a response to a global pandemic, and so that's why we're doing this. But we clearly understand that that this does not replace the teacher that's in there; it just provides someone else, during that teacher's absence. But our teachers, are invaluable within the classrooms, with our students.
Well, having worked in the school for many years, I know if a teacher has to be out, they want to know that they've got a reliable and competent substitute, or you're like this poor woman who never takes a day off. So, yeah. So having said that, any comments or questions from the board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I just want to thank you for what the last thing you said of reminding schools of how to keep subs. We are in, I feel like everyone is struggling with recruiting or having enough substitutes. We're not unique in this. I have no idea how we compare to other districts in the gaps each day, especially this last week. Well, some school districts only came back this week, but I have no idea. But I can imagine that maybe we're a little worse, but I can imagine that we're all in a really sinking ship. And that I can appreciate it. And I've struggled with this for the reasons of like, oh my gosh, we keep increasing subs and we still need subs. But I know the teachers and the students need the subs because otherwise we're just splitting off classrooms into other teachers. And now they got a class of 50 and really how much teaching or learning can be done, especially among the littles, right? And so it is a difficult position to be in, to be able to increase so much, but with one-time funds that is meant to be spent in this way, while we're still struggling to pay our staff and teachers who remain and will hopefully remain into the future. So I just wanted to, one, recognize, thank you for encouraging school sites to keep their subs, and two, recognize just the difficult situation that this pandemic has put us in between someone who could be temporary, but maybe is a regular, and our folks who remain and hopefully remain throughout their career.
I just want to add to that. I just want to thank the staff for finding a way to bring this to the board tonight, because I think that it is timely and it is immediate and it is something that needs to be done. And I know it was on a prior board agenda and got pulled. And probably that timing would have been better. But now it is really, really crucial and immediate. We can see the openings that we have that we need to fill. And like you said, our teachers need it, right? It's not an ideal position at all, but we don't want our teachers needing to combine classes and take up all of their prep time trying to fill in for each other either. So I appreciate you finding a creative way to get it to the table.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Oh, you want to comment? Of course, our teacher, we need to hear from you.
I would just like to say that I would be also very, it's really, really hard to cover a class during your prep, or I can imagine at the elementary school level to take in additional students. And I would be really in favor of and receptive to increasing the pay for prep coverage if we could during this time. So I just wanted to say that that would really help, I think.
So you're looking for a motion? Madam President, I move to approve item 18.3, the increase to substitute teacher daily rate of pay.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Trustee Fowler?
Yes.
Okay, and that passes 5+1. Okay, that takes us to 18.4, review and potential approval of additional compensation for substitute teachers.
So yeah, so again, this is, I'm gonna let Mr. Sheehy present this item.
Okay.
Yeah, so in going along with the previous agenda item, we are trying to respond to the pandemic, looking at currently right now with 50 openings, looking at one-time funds that we do have available to us, hoping that this is a harder time than it is going to be for the rest of the year. We are looking to offer a one-time payment for any substitute who subs 20 or more days between January 13th and February 28th to receive an additional $1,000 of compensation.
Okay. Questions? Comments or motion?
I'm curious how soon we will be able to include information on our website about the new governor's decree around changing the substitute requirements.
Yes, so yesterday, for those of you that don't know, yesterday, Governor Newsom had an executive order around staff shortages. We contacted the Contra Costa Department of Education earlier today. They were going into meetings to discuss it and to break it all down. We are expecting correspondence tomorrow morning to exactly what it means. There have been a few different interpretations around the sub requirements in terms of, is it just a bachelor's and a background check? Is that all you need in order to start processing? So we expect to have new guidance tomorrow morning from the county, but we are waiting to hear from them. I know we put in calls, multiple calls to the county office today because it is very timely. And it is something that we know with these two items coming to the board tonight, we know that this could be a trifecta of things to get people into the classroom to help provide the support for our students.
So I appreciate that answer. I received some communications that were forwarded to HR from individuals who want to give back to the school district based on their work experience. They're newly retired. They have expertise and they're loyal to Mount Diablo School District. And this is an opportunity to introduce individuals to our public schools again. And, I'm sure that administrators will observe these individuals carefully. The people that I've been talking to or have received comments from have been volunteers in our classrooms, so they know our general procedures and could work, in my view, well with students. I think this is an opportunity to also re-engage people with workplace experience into considering careers in public education or being long-term subs for us. And there will be training opportunities, I'm sure, for the, folks as we move through this pandemic crisis. But I'm very interested in this. These folks won't make it for this 20-day period.
Yes.
But I'm sure there will be some individuals that are, this will be attractive for.
I just had a clarifying question that just came to mind. It says completing 20 or more full days consecutive or not consecutive between that period of time. Is that a substitute who is filling in for a particular teacher and it becomes a long-term, period, or could they sub in all different schools?
They could be in 20 different schools between tomorrow and February 28th and to receive that additional compensation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'll move to approve the additional compensation for substitute teachers.
Thank you.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Trustee Fowler?
Yes.
And that passes 5+1. And that concludes our agenda for this evening. I'll send an email reminding you, but hopefully at the next meeting, we'll be doing the committee assignments. So send me any requests you have and I'm going to try to make it where you don't have to be at 2 meetings at the same time, like happened to me a couple of times this year. So yeah, get that information to me and we'll do our best to fulfill everybody's wishes. And with that, we wish you all a good evening. Thank you.